An icy wind tears ash from the glowing gates of Goryokaku Fort. A wounded samurai clutches his frost-covered katana, breathing heavily in the freezing air. This is not the end of a great era, but the birth of a completely new world. The year is 1869. While the rest of Japan obediently bows before Emperor Meiji, a handful of defiant warriors and audacious French adventurers proclaim the first true democratic republic in Asia on snow-covered Hokkaido. We are used to considering the Japanese Empire an indestructible historical monolith. But imagine that the fate of an entire nation changed dramatically due to one abnormally severe blizzard and the deafening salvos of a foreign fleet's heavy guns. Let's fast forward to modern Sapporo. This is a cyberpunk metropolis where neon hieroglyphs illuminate elegant French architecture, and the direct descendants of ronin create advanced robots in the sovereign and technologically invulnerable state of Ezo. To truly understand the origins of this incredible geopolitical schism, we need to return to the bloody and ruthless era of the Boshin War. Imagine 1868, the centuries-old, seemingly unshakable power of the mighty Tokugawa shogunate begins to rapidly crumble under the heavy blows of the modernized imperial army. This is not just a clash of clans, it's a brutal collision of two worlds. On one side are ancient traditions, armed with swords and outdated muskets. On the other, ruthless progress, sponsored by British capital and equipped with the latest Gatling guns. Imperial forces, led by ambitious leaders from the Satsuma and Choshu domains, sweep across the country like a fiery wave, leaving no stone unturned of the old order. The shogunate's samurai, accustomed to their elite status, suddenly find themselves relics of the past, doomed to complete annihilation in the furnace of impending industrialization. After the catastrophic and humiliating defeat at the Battle of Toba-Fushimi, the forces loyal to the shogun find themselves in an absolutely desperate situation. The retreat turns into chaos, and the realization of the inevitable end weighs heavily on the commanders. They understand perfectly well the new regime of the ambitious Emperor Meiji will not give them a single chance of survival, let alone preserving their status. In a modernized pro-Western Japan, there is simply no place for the old warriors. Their lands will be confiscated, privileges annulled, and they themselves will become outcasts in their own homeland. At this critical moment, when most are ready to commit seppuku or meekly lay down their arms, a crazy, almost suicidal idea is born: to defy fate itself and find a new home where Kyoto's hand has not yet reached. Admiral Enomoto Takeaki steps onto the stage of history, a brilliant naval officer, superbly educated in the Netherlands, and a staunch traditionalist to the core. When a categorical order arrives from the capital to hand over the entire shogunate fleet to the imperial forces, Enomoto makes a truly fateful decision that will forever change the map of Asia. Under the cover of night, ignoring direct threats and ultimatums, he hoists sails and leads 8 of the best surviving warships directly out of Tokyo Bay. His destination is the harsh, cold, and inhospitable northern island of Ezo, known today as Hokkaido. Enomoto doesn't just save the fleet, he carries with him the last hope of preserving the samurai spirit, planning to transform the wild northern wastes into an impregnable citadel for all those who disagree with the new regime.
Along with the rebellious fleet, not only 3,000 of the most loyal, battle-hardened samurai set off for the icy north, but also a handful of foreign specialists whose presence would become a decisive factor in this geopolitical game. These were French military advisors, led by the charismatic and incredibly stubborn artillery captain Jules Brunet. Paris had officially recalled its mission, ordering the officers to immediately return to France so as not to spoil relations with the new Japanese government. But Brunei does the unthinkable. He writes a letter of resignation and categorically refuses to abandon his Japanese brothers-in-arms. For him, it is no longer just a contract. It is a matter of honor. Along with his men, he boards Enomoto's ships, bringing with him invaluable knowledge of European tactics and blueprints for the latest fortifications.
Landing in the snow-covered port of Hakodate at the end of 1868, the chilled but determined rebels act swiftly. They capture Fort Goryokaku without a single shot, a unique fortress in Asia built according to advanced European design in the shape of a perfect five-pointed star. These massive stone bastions, surrounded by wide icy moats, become the main citadel and the beating heart of their resistance. French engineers immediately set about modernizing the fortifications, installing heavy naval guns on the earthworks and transforming Goryokaku into a true masterpiece of defensive art. Within these walls, protected from the biting northern winds, a daring political project is born. The exiles understand that to legitimize their struggle in the eyes of Western powers, they need a status beyond a mere rebellion. They need a full-fledged state. In December, an event unthinkable for the conservative East takes place. In the frozen halls of Goryokaku, stern samurai who had spent their lives bowing to the right of blood and class hierarchy hold a historic vote. For the first time in Asian history, the principle of universal suffrage among military personnel and officials is used. Casting aside centuries of prejudice, they elect Admiral Enomoto Takeaki as the first president of the newly formed Republic of Ezo. This is an incredible paradox. Japan's most radical conservatives, defenders of the feudal shogunate, create the continent's first democratic republic modeled after American and French examples. They form a government, appoint ministers, and even attempt to establish diplomatic contacts with foreign consuls in Hakodate. Ezo raises its own flag, a golden chrysanthemum with a red seven-pointed star on an azure background, openly defying a millennia-old monarchy. News of the audacious, independent state in the north sparks a storm of fury in Kyoto. Emperor Meiji and his advisors perceive the Republic of Ezo not merely as a separatist rebellion, but as an existential threat to the entire new order. Allowing the samurai to establish themselves on Hokkaido would set a dangerous precedent and could provoke new uprisings across the country. The government immediately orders the assembly of a colossal armada for the complete, unconditional annihilation of the rebels. Thousands of soldiers are gathered in ports, the latest British steamships and tons of ammunition are purchased. Tokyo thirsts for blood and swift retribution. Imperial generals, intoxicated by a series of easy victories in the south, are confident that suppressing the Northern Republic will take at most a couple of weeks. They do not yet know that nature has already prepared its own deadly plan for them. In our familiar reality, in the spring of 1869, Imperial forces successfully landed on Hokkaido, methodically crushed the rebels, and within a few months wiped the Republic of Ezo off the map, reducing it to a brief historical footnote. But it is at this point of bifurcation that anomalous nature brutally and mercilessly intervenes in the course of history, changing the fate of Asia forever. As the Meiji Armada confidently moves towards the northern latitudes, atmospheric pressure over the Sea of Japan sharply drops, forming a cyclone of unprecedented destructive power. Instead of the expected easy stroll, the Imperial fleet encounters an icy hell. In this alternate timeline, the climate becomes the very divine wind, the kamikaze, which centuries earlier saved Japan from the Mongol invasion. Only now, this wind blows into the sails of the rebellious republic, freezing Tokyo's ambitions at their root. The winter of 1868-1869 proves phenomenally harsh, the most severe and deadly in the last 100 years. Temperatures plummet to critical levels,
encasing the coastal waters of the Tsugaru Strait in a thick, impenetrable shield of ice. The vanguard of the Imperial fleet, imprudently approaching too close to Azo's shores in an attempt to conduct a reconnaissance in force, finds itself in a deadly trap. Trapped in the ice, deprived of maneuverability and supplies, the much-vaunted British steamships become helpless targets for the merciless elements. Ship hulls crack under the pressure of ice floes, coal rapidly runs out, and hundreds of soldiers freeze to death right on deck without firing a single shot at the enemy. This climatic catastrophe deals a crushing blow to Tokyo's logistics, paralyzing any attempts at a large-scale invasion for at least 6 months and granting the Azo samurai invaluable time. Taking advantage of this unexpected, heaven-sent respite, Jules Brunet and his French officers launch into a flurry of activity. They feverishly transform the scattered, exhausted ronin units into a disciplined, deadly new type of army. Brunet achieves the impossible. He organically blends strict European linear tactics with the indomitable, fanatical spirit of Bushido. Samurai, who only yesterday disdained firearms, now automatically practice volley fire and bayonet charges without losing their phenomenal speed and fearlessness in close combat. Hakodate's forges work around the clock, casting bullets and repairing rifles. On the snow-covered parade grounds of Goryokaku, sharp French commands ring out, to which the warriors respond with thunderous Japanese battle cries. This army is no longer a collection of doomed men. It is a steel blade forged in ice, ready to cut the throat of imperial ambitions. Meanwhile, on the other side of the world, in the opulent offices of Paris, Azo's diplomats pull off an incredible geopolitical gambit. They manage to establish direct contact with Emperor Napoleon III's inner circle and conclude an absolutely secret treaty. Napoleon, greatly irritated by the British Empire actively sponsoring and arming the Meiji government, decides to use the rebellious republic as an ideal tool to weaken London's influence in the Far East. Wishing to spite his eternal rivals and gain exclusive access to the resources of the North, the French monarch makes an unprecedented decision. Under the guise of protecting French citizens and trade interests, he dispatches a powerful squadron of the latest Pacific Fleet Ironclads to aid the besieged samurai. This secret diplomatic victory becomes the missing element that will overturn the entire chessboard of Asian politics. Spring 1869 arrives. The ice in the Tsugaru Strait finally melts, and the regrouped imperial army, eager for revenge for the winter's humiliation, launches a massive general offensive on Hakodate. Dozens of transports carrying infantry, covered by the squadron, relentlessly approach the shores of Ezo. It seems the fate of the Samurai Republic is sealed, and Tokyo's numerical superiority is about to crush the rebels. But at the very moment when Goryokaku's lookouts are preparing to sound the alarm, massive, ominous silhouettes emerge through the morning mist on the horizon. These are not Japanese ships. This is the arriving squadron of French ironclads, their black metal hulls gleaming ominously in the spring sun, and thick coal smoke billowing from their funnels. The appearance of these armored leviathans instantly shifts the entire balance of power in the bay, turning hunters into defenseless prey. A grand artillery duel erupts in Hakodate Bay, one that would enter naval history textbooks. Heavy French ironclads engage directly with the British ships hired by Emperor Meiji. The air trembles with the deafening roar of large-caliber guns, and the water boils from falling shells. French naval artillery, superior to the enemy in range and destructive power, methodically tears apart the wooden superstructures of the Imperial steamships. Shells pierce them through and through, causing powder magazines to detonate. Within hours, the pride of the Meiji fleet turns into flaming wreckage, sinking to the bottom along with its crews.
This catastrophic defeat at sea leaves the Imperial ground forces, who had landed ashore, completely isolated. Deprived of artillery support from the sea, cut off from retreat routes and food supplies, Tokyo's soldiers find themselves trapped in hostile territory.
Cut off from supplies, demoralized, and freezing in the deep snows of Hokkaido, the Meiji army launches a desperate assault on the walls of Goryokaku. But they are met not by a disorganized mob of rebels, but by a cold-blooded killing machine. On the earthworks stand samurai clad in traditional armor, armed with the latest French Chassepot breech-loading rifles. Their lethally accurate, relentless fire mows down the attacking ranks even before they reach the icy moats. When the Imperial infantry, losing hundreds of men, miraculously reaches the walls, the samurai draw their katanas and with a blood-curdling battle cry launch a counterattack. In close combat, the hardened veterans of the shogunate leave the young Tokyo conscripts no chance. The snow around the fortress turns crimson with blood, and the once invincible Meiji army suffers the most crushing and humiliating defeat in its short history.
News of the defeat of the ground forces and the destruction of the fleet causes genuine panic in Tokyo. The Meiji government suddenly realizes the bitter truth. A swift conquest of the rebellious north is absolutely impossible. The northern forts are impregnable. The Ezo army is more combat-ready than ever, and most importantly, French ironclads stand in Hakodate Bay, their guns ready to pulverize any new landing. The Emperor's British advisors, fearing a full-scale war with France in the Far East, strongly recommend retreating and freezing the conflict. With heavy hearts and swallowed pride, the imperial government is forced to back down. In neutral waters, aboard an American cruiser, emissaries from Tokyo and representatives of the Republic of Ezo sign an armistice, which many in Japan would call the most humiliating document of the 19th century. The Boshin War ends not with triumph, but with a shocking compromise.
Under the terms of this historic treaty, the Japanese Empire de facto recognizes the independence of the Republic of Ezo, although de jure it uses vague wording about temporary autonomy under protectorate. But the reality is that the once unified, millennia-old empire officially splits in two. A new, heavily guarded state border is drawn directly across the cold waters of the Tsugaru Strait. To the south remains the rapidly modernizing, ambitious, and aggressive Meiji Empire, eager for expansion. And to the north, behind a veil of snow and fog, a harsh, militarized republic of exiled samurai establishes itself, relying on French bayonets and the Bushido code. This geopolitical rift forever changes the balance of power in the Pacific region. From now on, Tokyo will constantly have to look over its shoulder at its dangerous northern neighbor, and Ezo faces a long and difficult path of building an independent state in a hostile environment.
The first years of independence are incredibly difficult for the young republic. Imagine the harsh reality of Hokkaido in the late 19th century. Biting winds, a 6-month winter, and a catastrophic shortage of food. Tokyo, gritting its teeth, imposes a strict economic blockade, hoping to starve out the rebels. Every handful of rice becomes worth its weight in gold. In these extreme conditions, the Ezo government declares a regime of total societal mobilization. The survival of the nation is placed above personal comfort. Peasants, former samurai, and French mercenaries together chop wood, build barracks, and cultivate the frozen ground. The constant, invisible threat of revanche from the Japanese Empire hangs in the cold air like a sword of Damocles. No one is under any illusions. The armistice is merely a reprieve. To avoid being wiped off the face of the earth next spring, the inhabitants of the north must transform their icy island into a unified, well-coordinated military camp where every person, from fisherman to minister, is ready to take up a rifle at any second.
In this crucible of hardship, a completely unique state system is born, with President Enomoto Takeaki and War Minister Jules Brunet as its architects. They understand that blindly copying Western institutions will not work here. Instead, they create a striking hybrid. Strict military discipline and the ancient Bushido code of honor are elegantly intertwined with the advanced principles of French republican democracy. The parliament in Hakodate, where elected deputies sit, more closely resembles a commander-in-chief's headquarters. Political debates here are fierce, but extremely polite, and corruption is equated with treason and punished by ritual seppuku. Enomoto builds a meritocracy. High positions are earned not by noble birth, but by concrete achievements for the Republic. Brunet, in turn, introduces European bureaucracy and a prefecture system. Thus, on the snowy shores of Hokkaido, samurai devotion to duty transforms into civic responsibility, forming an unprecedented political system that European newspapers of the time would dub Spartan democracy with an Asian face.
The cultural landscape of Ezo changes beyond recognition as French influence rapidly penetrates literally all spheres of the young nation's life. On the snowy, perfectly straight streets of the developing Sapporo, elegant mansions and government buildings in the pompous style of Napoleon III's Second Empire magically rise, sharply contrasting with traditional Japanese wooden structures. Imagine this surreal landscape. Officers in blue European uniforms with ancestral katanas at their belts drink hot coffee in Parisian bistros, sheltering from a heavy blizzard. In schools open throughout the Republic, alongside native Japanese and calligraphy, French becomes a compulsory subject. Gallic culture brings with it advanced medicine, European philosophy, and engineering. The blending of two infinitely distant mentalities gives rise to a surprising Franco-Japanese society. Even French terms are organically woven into the everyday speech of samurai, and in the barracks of Goryokaku, evenings resonate with both ancient Japanese ballads and the marches of Parisian infantry.
To survive in a tight ring of enemies and avoid becoming a pawn in the games of great powers, Ezo proclaims a radical foreign policy doctrine, a policy of total armed neutrality. Enomoto Takeaki openly declares to the world, "We do not seek foreign lands, but whoever comes to Hokkaido with a sword will remain in our frozen earth forever." The entire island is systematically and ruthlessly transformed into one colossal, impregnable fortress. Following the example of European Switzerland, Ezo's engineers cut extensive networks of hidden bunkers, artillery casemates, and secret ammunition depots into the Rocky Mountains. Mountain passes are mined, and the coastline bristles with large-caliber batteries purchased from Krupp and Schneider factories. This Asian Switzerland does not merely declare its neutrality on paper, it backs it up with thousands of heavy artillery pieces and an absolute readiness for total war of attrition. No foreign warship dares to enter its territorial waters without an invitation.
The cornerstone of the new northern nation becomes the law on universal conscription. Service in the Republic's self-defense forces is still strictly mandatory for all citizens, regardless of their origin, wealth, or social status. This radical step definitively and irrevocably erases the archaic class boundaries that had divided Japanese society for centuries. In the same barracks, shoulder to shoulder, sleep the sons of high-ranking daimyo and the children of simple peasant fishermen. They eat from the same pot, freeze together on night watches, and together master the most complex European tactics. Yesterday's farmers gain the right to bear arms, which was once the exclusive privilege of samurai, and become imbued with the spirit of Bushido. Thus, a unified, monolithic nation of northern warrior republicans is forged, bound by iron discipline and the understanding that the freedom of their homeland depends on each of them. Social mobility works flawlessly,
A talented son of a commoner can easily rise to the rank of general if he demonstrates tactical genius.
Towards the end of the 19th century, the Ezo government realizes that bravery and high walls alone are not enough for long-term survival. The future belongs to technology. The Republic aggressively and purposefully attracts the best foreign engineers, chemists, and metallurgists from all over the world. The Republican Polytechnic Institute is established in Sapporo, where professors from Paris, Berlin, and London are lured with enormous sums of money. The focus is on absolute technological superiority as the main guarantee of independence. While the rest of Asia trades silk and tea, Ezo purchases the latest machinery, builds advanced shipyards and steel mills. The government issues unprecedented grants for research in ballistics, optics, and precision mechanics. Foreign specialists receive luxurious villas and full support, but in return, they are obliged to transfer their knowledge to local students. This intellectual vacuum cleaner transforms the wild northern island into the main scientific research center of the entire Far East, laying the foundation for a future economic miracle.
The difference in development vectors between the two Japans becomes colossal. While the southern Meiji Empire, obsessed with Pan-Asianism, pours its entire budget into building a huge offensive fleet and training a multi-million-man infantry for aggressive expansion into Korea and China, Ezo chooses a fundamentally different path. Sapporo categorically rejects offensive weapons. Their doctrine is absolute defense. Therefore, the Republic concentrates all its scientific and industrial resources on creating unique defensive technologies and developing ultra-precise mechanics. They do not build battleships, but they are the first in Asia to design high-speed torpedo boats and experimental submarines to protect the straits. Instead of mass-producing cheap rifles, Ezo engineers perfect artillery sights, rangefinders, and early warning systems. This narrow specialization in high-tech defense leads to the fact that by the beginning of the 20th century, optics and precision instruments from Ezo begin to surpass even the much-vaunted German counterparts in quality.
The first truly serious test of the Republic's neutrality comes with the outbreak of the Russo-Japanese War in 1904. Hokkaido's geographical position makes it an ideal strategic staging ground. Both Tokyo and St. Petersburg launch an unprecedented diplomatic game, attempting to draw Sapporo into the bloody conflict on their side. Emperor Meiji appeals to the voice of common blood and promises generous territorial concessions on Sakhalin in exchange for the use of Ezo's ports. The Russian Empire, through its ambassadors, offers a secret military alliance and colossal financial subsidies, hoping to strike at Japanese communications from the north. Tension in the corridors of power reaches its peak. One wrong decision, and the young republic would be drawn into the meat grinder of a world war, risking losing everything that had been built over decades. But the Ezo government, true to the precepts of its founding fathers, maintains icy calm and categorically refuses both warring empires, closing its territorial waters to all military vessels. Words are matched by deeds. When a squadron of Russian cruisers, ignoring warnings, attempts to cut through the Tsugaru Strait, the Ezo government acts swiftly and decisively. The latest coastal batteries of Hakodate's hidden forts, equipped with ultra-precise rangefinders of their own production, deliver a warning salvo of incredible accuracy. Heavy shells land exactly 100 meters ahead of the flagship's course. Simultaneously, squadrons of high-speed torpedo boats emerge from camouflaged hangars, ready to sink any intruder. The commander of Ezo's self-defense forces transmits via radio in plain text. The next salvo will be to kill. You have 10 minutes to leave our waters. Realizing that the northern samurai are not bluffing and are ready to destroy a foreign fleet without hesitation, the Russian admirals hastily change course.
Similarly, attempts by Japanese destroyers to take refuge in Hokkaido's bays are also harshly suppressed. Ezo vividly demonstrates its steel teeth to the world.
This bloodless but incredibly tense incident in the Tsugaru Strait has the effect of a bombshell in diplomatic circles in London, Paris, and Washington. World powers suddenly realize that a new, formidable player has emerged in the Far East, one that cannot be dictated to. The firmness and uncompromising nature with which Sapporo defended its borders against two giant empires definitively secures the Republic of Ezo's official status as an inviolable buffer zone. The international community de facto recognizes Hokkaido as the Asian Switzerland, a guarantor of stability in the region. Now, no general staff in the world considers the possibility of invading the island, understanding that the losses would be catastrophic. This diplomatic triumph ensures decades of peaceful development for the Republic. From now on, Ezo is not just a handful of separatist exiles, but a sovereign, technologically advanced state whose right to independence is carved in stone and backed by the muzzles of large-caliber guns, always ready for battle.
The true economic boom and golden age of the Republic begin with the first salvos of World War I. While Europe drowns in the blood and mud of trenches, strictly neutral Ezo transforms into the main factory for high-tech components for the Entente powers. The French connections, established by Jules Brunet, bear fantastic fruit. Factories in Sapporo and Muroran work 3 shifts, ceaselessly churning out complex optical sights for artillery, precision machinery, gyroscopes, and parts for the first aircraft engines. The quality of Ezo's products is so high that British and French quartermasters are willing to pay double the price in gold for them. The Republic's gold reserves grow exponentially. Hokkaido's ports are packed with merchant ships from all over the world. Yesterday's poor state of exiled samurai, where rice was once scarce, suddenly becomes one of the wealthiest and most industrially developed corners of the planet, bathing in super profits from the global conflict.
But the Ezo government, raised in the harsh traditions of samurai asceticism, does not spend these colossal revenues on palaces and luxuries. Understanding perfectly well that military orders are not eternal, they invest billions of francs in the most valuable resource, human capital. An unprecedented program for building an advanced education system unfolds across the Republic. Ultra-modern university campuses, equipped with the world's best laboratories, are erected. The curriculum is radically restructured. Absolute emphasis is placed on higher mathematics, fundamental physics, engineering, and mandatory fluency in 3 foreign languages. Being a scientist or engineer in Ezo becomes more prestigious than being a general. The state fully funds the education of talented young people in the best universities in Europe and America, with the strict condition of returning home. Thus, the intellectual foundation is laid that within a few decades will allow Ezo to make an unthinkable technological leap and forever leave its competitors behind.
The idyll ends in the grim 1930s. While Ezo builds universities, radical militarists and fanatical nationalists come to power in Tokyo. The idea of a greater East Asia co-prosperity sphere captivates the minds of the Southern Empire, and the existence of an independent, prosperous, democratic Ezo right on their doorstep becomes an unbearable insult to Japanese generals. Relations between the 2 Japanese states rapidly escalate to the breaking point. Propaganda in Tokyo calls the inhabitants of Hokkaido traitors to the nation and puppets of the West. Regular, brutal skirmishes erupt on the sea border in the Tsugaru Strait. Imperial destroyers deliberately violate territorial waters, provoking Ezo's Coast Guard to return fire. Dangerous maneuvers by combat aircraft occur in the skies over the strait. The atmosphere is permeated with paranoia and the expectation of inevitable war. Ezo's citizens once again retrieve their ancestral katanas, and factories go on wartime footing, preparing to repel a massive invasion from their southern brethren.
Indeed, deep within the Japanese general staff, a top-secret plan for a full-scale invasion of Hokkaido, codenamed Northern Storm, is being developed. It involves landing a 1 million-strong army and carpet-bombing Sapporo. But when Imperial intelligence analysts lay detailed reports on the actual state of Ezo's defenses before the generals, a deathly silence hangs in the offices. It turns out the entire island is a deadly trap. Impregnable mountain forts extend dozens of meters underground and can withstand direct hits from heavy aerial bombs. Every bridge is mined. Every road is targeted by automated anti-aircraft systems with radar guidance, which Tokyo could only dream of. Analysis shows, even if the Imperial Army manages to land, advancing deep into the island will turn into an endless, bloody meat grinder that will consume millions of lives and completely exhaust the Empire's resources. Gritting its teeth, Tokyo forever abandons the idea of a direct military conquest of Ezo. When the conflagration of World War II erupts and the Japanese Empire strikes Pearl Harbor, the Republic of Ezo makes the only correct decision, once again declaring its strictest armed neutrality. While the entire Asia-Pacific region plunges into the chaos of destruction, Hokkaido remains the sole island of stability and security. Ezo transforms into a giant rescue ark. Thousands of people from across the continent flee here, risking their lives. Chinese dissidents, European scientists escaping the Nazis, Korean refugees, and even Japanese pacifists unwilling to die for the emperor's ambitions. The government in Sapporo welcomes everyone willing to abide by the Republic's laws and work for its benefit. This colossal influx of brilliant minds, carriers of diverse cultures and unconventional ideas, creates a unique intellectual environment on the snow-covered island, a melting pot of geniuses that will soon provide an incredible impetus for the development of the most advanced technologies.
The contrast between the two Japans reaches its peak in 1945, while American bomber fleets methodically erase the wooden districts of Tokyo, Osaka, and Kobe into radioactive dust and ash. The cities of Ezo live in a parallel reality. Sapporo and Hakodate shine dazzlingly with neon lights in the winter night, knowing neither blackout nor the wail of air raid sirens. In warm, brightly lit cafes, French expats and Japanese engineers calmly discuss quantum physics. And deep underground, in top-secret laboratories carved into granite rocks, the best minds on the planet, saved by the Republic from the horrors of the World War, are already working on the technologies of tomorrow, the first electronic computers and automation systems. Ezo is not just weathering the war, it is accumulating humanity's knowledge, preparing to explode the post-war world with its innovations, while its southern neighbors try to survive in the ashes of their collapsed empire.
After the nuclear bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki and the unconditional surrender of the Japanese Empire, the geopolitical landscape of Asia changes forever. And in this new reality, the Republic of Ezo finds itself in an absolutely unique, unprecedented position. It is the only industrial center in the entire vast region whose infrastructure, factories, and scientific base were not damaged by bombs by even 1%. While southern Japan lies in ruins, occupied by American troops, starving and humiliated, Ezo's economy operates at full capacity. They hold a monopoly on the production of complex machinery in all of Asia. Sapporo instantly becomes the main financial and technological hub of the devastated continent. Gold and currency flow to Hokkaido like a river, as Ezo's factories supply critically important equipment for the reconstruction of neighboring countries' shattered economies. This colossal head start allows the Republic to make a quantum leap in development, forever leaving its historical competitors behind.
With the onset of the Cold War, Hokkaido's strategic value skyrockets. The island becomes a key point at the intersection of the interests of two new superpowers. Both the United States and the Soviet Union launch a real diplomatic hunt for Sapporo's favor. Washington offers a nuclear umbrella and billions in investments in exchange for military bases against the USSR. Moscow promises cheap resources and access to vast markets in exchange for loyalty. The pressure is colossal. But the proud descendants of the samurai, remembering Enomoto Takeaki's precepts, remain unyielding. They politely but firmly show both American generals and Soviet commissars the door. Ezo reaffirms its status as a non-aligned state, declaring that its only ally is its own technologically advanced army. This audacious refusal to submit to the Cold War hegemons provokes fury in both capitals, but forces the entire world to treat the Northern Republic with even greater respect.
Caught between the hammer and anvil of nuclear superpowers, Ezo makes a brilliant strategic decision. Instead of engaging in an exhausting and pointless nuclear arms race that would bankrupt the country, the government directs colossal resources into completely different, unexplored areas. They bet on intellect, not brute force. Billions of dollars are poured into the development of cybernetics, information theory, microelectronics, and nascent robotics. While the world anxiously awaits atomic war, engineers in Sapporo design the first industrial manipulators and write complex algorithms. The Republic's leadership understands, in the future world, victory will go not to those with more missiles, but to those who control information and automate production. This strategic foresight transforms Ezo into the cradle of the digital revolution, laying the groundwork for the creation of the very cyberpunk society that will astonish humanity in the 21st century.
The secret of this unthinkable technological miracle lies in the unique cultural synthesis that developed on Hokkaido. Imagine an ideal environment for innovation. Traditional samurai discipline brought to absolute perfection. Incredible meticulousness and attention to detail merge here with the brilliant French engineering school, which encourages unconventional thinking and intellectual audacity. Add to this the constant influx of brilliant dissidents and immigrant scientists from all over the world, to whom the Republic offers the best working conditions. In Sapporo's laboratories, there is no room for dogma. Here reigns the spirit of absolute scientific freedom, rigidly bound by the corporate ethics of Bushido. Researchers work around the clock, viewing the solution of complex technical problems as a matter of personal honor. It is this explosive, unprecedented cocktail of Eastern perseverance, Western creativity, and colossal state investment that launches a true technological revolution on the snow-covered island, one unmatched in history.
By the early 1970s, the Republic of Ezo makes an unprecedented technological leap, becoming the absolute world leader in the production of industrial manipulators. While factories in Detroit and Manchester still rely on heavy manual labor, assembly lines in the industrial zones of Muroran and Asahikawa are already fully automated. Engineers at Ezo Mechanic Corporation, founded by descendants of the Aizu clan samurai, patent the world's first microprocessor-controlled servo drives. The export of these robotic systems brings colossal super profits to the treasury. Imagine the scene. Giant steel arms, assembled with the elegance of traditional Japanese karakuri mechanisms, flawlessly weld ship hulls and assemble complex microelectronics. This breakthrough forever changes the global landscape of automated production. Western corporations line up for Northern technologies, and Ezo dictates its terms on the world market, transforming the cold island into an indispensable hub of the global economy.
Simultaneously with its triumph in robotics,
The Republic of Ezo achieves a quiet revolution in a completely different field: information security. The northern state's historical paranoia, surrounded for centuries by potential enemies, transforms into an obsession with cryptography. The Republic's special services, the famous Second Bureau, inheriting the methods of French intelligence and the ruthlessness of the Iga ninja, attract the best mathematicians to create unbreakable ciphers. In closed research centers near Hakodate, the world's most advanced asymmetric encryption algorithms are developed, surpassing the NSA's developments by a good decade. For Ezo engineers, creating a flawless cryptographic key becomes the modern equivalent of forging a perfect katana blade, a process that tolerates not even the slightest flaw. This maniacal secrecy lays the foundation for the Republic's future dominance in global cybersecurity, transforming its digital networks into an absolutely impregnable fortress.
While the southern Japanese Empire, with its capital in Tokyo, experiences its own post-war economic miracle, flooding world markets with cheap cars, transistors, and consumer electronics, Ezo chooses a fundamentally different path. Sapporo is not interested in mass-produced goods. The Northern Republic monopolizes the global market for high-tech security, precision optics, and early artificial intelligence systems. A paradoxical situation arises. Southern Japan builds millions of Toyota and Nissan cars, but the most complex robotic machines for their assembly, as well as secure communication systems for their corporations, are purchased from the northern neighbor at astronomical prices. This economic symbiosis, seasoned with mutual envy and political distrust, creates a unique dynamic in the Asia-Pacific region. Ezo becomes a kind of brain and safe of Asia, while the South takes on the role of its manufacturing muscles. By the end of the 20th century, the culture of the Republic of Ezo finally crystallizes into an incredible, unparalleled mix. Imagine a society where the harsh northern asceticism and stoicism of Bushido organically intertwine with refined French gastronomy and advanced computer technologies. On the streets of snow-covered Otaro, hereditary aristocrats in impeccably tailored tweed suits discuss the philosophical treatises of Miyamoto Musashi, sipping vintage Bordeaux. French influence, established by Captain Jules Brunet, permeates everything, from the school curriculum to cuisine. Traditional fish markets offer the freshest tuna sashimi, alongside bakeries that bake perfect baguettes. This is a society of the highest discipline, where being a minute late is considered a loss of face, yet intellectual freedom is elevated to an absolute, making Ezo a magnet for the most eccentric geniuses from around the globe. Everyday life in the Republic's capital looks like a living page from a science fiction novel. A typical winter morning, Sapporo residents drink strong coffee with hot croissants in cozy bistros with panoramic views of the snow-capped peaks of Mount Tiini and Moiwa. A unique Franco-Japanese Creole dialect hangs in the air, a linguistic phenomenon in which complex Japanese forms of politeness elegantly combine with French grammar and an abundance of technical terms. At a nearby table, engineers in strict corporate uniforms might be engrossed in discussing the latest breakthroughs in quantum computing or debating the topology of neural networks. There is no hustle and bustle of southern Japanese metropolises in this city. Instead, an atmosphere of cold, focused intellectual power reigns. Every resident learns from childhood. The survival of their small but proud nation directly depends on the sharpness of their minds.
The architectural appearance of Ezo's cities is strikingly, even shockingly, different from the chaotic, cramped development of Tokyo or Osaka. Thanks to Hokkaido's vast spaces and the French urban planning school, Sapporo is designed with the imperial grandeur of Baron Haussmann. Wide, perfectly straight boulevards lined with plane trees and maples cut through the urban fabric. There are no oppressive micro-apartments here. The state encourages spacious housing so that citizens can comfortably endure harsh winters. Elegant stone mansions in the Napoleon III style, adorned with wrought iron balconies, harmoniously coexist with futuristic skyscrapers of glass and titanium, their spires lost in low snow clouds. In winter, the streets are heated by thermal waters, transforming sidewalks into clean oases amidst snowdrifts. This is a monumental, cold aesthetic, reflecting the spirit of the nation. Hard as steel, elegant as a blade, and absolutely impervious to the blows of the elements. Despite colossal technological progress, the foundation of Eizo's statehood remains unchanged. It is a nation army. Service in the Republic's self-defense forces is still strictly mandatory for all citizens, regardless of their wealth, gender, or social status. This is not merely conscription, but a sacred initiation ritual, the highest honor for the descendants of the unconquered. On Oath Day, each recruit, clad in a dress uniform with golden epaulets, kneels and pledges allegiance to the Republic, placing a hand on an antique samurai sword preserved in the pantheon of Goryokaku Fort. This tradition firmly binds society, erasing class distinctions. Future billionaires, brilliant programmers, and simple farmers freeze together on night marches in the Daisetsuzan Mountains, learning the main lesson of Bushido. The life of an individual is fleeting, but the independence of Eizo is eternal. The advent of the global internet in the turbulent 90s opens up completely new horizons for the Republic of Eizo, transforming it into the world's main vault for digital data. Realizing that information would become the most valuable resource of the 21st century, the government in Sapporo adopts an unprecedented law on digital neutrality and absolute data secrecy. Just as Swiss banks stored the gold of kings and dictators for centuries, Eizo's servers begin to accumulate the main secrets of transnational corporations, governments, and technological giants. The Republic's laws categorically prohibit the extradition of data to foreign intelligence agencies, and any attempt at unauthorized access to servers is equated with an act of military invasion. World elites understand, if you want your blueprints, financial transactions, or source codes to be absolutely secure, they must be hidden beneath the snows of Hokkaido. The infrastructure of this global digital repository is astonishing in its scale. Deep beneath the basalt layers of the snow-covered Daisetsuzan Mountains, in former mines and secret bunkers from the Cold War era, colossal data centers are hidden. Rows of black monolithic servers stretch for kilometers in absolute silence, broken only by the hum of powerful cooling systems that use icy meltwater from underground glaciers. Access to these digital sanctuaries is guarded by elite units of cyber samurai, special forces fighters of the Shinsengumi, armed not only with kinetic weapons, but also with advanced electronic warfare systems. They control every millimeter of the tunnels with biometric scanners and autonomous drones. Any attempt at physical penetration into these complexes is tantamount to suicide. Here, in the darkness of the underground, beats the digital heart of the modern world, securely sheltered behind the impenetrable shield of the paranoid Northern Republic. In the 21st century, relations between Eizo and the Southern Japanese Empire represent a complex diplomatic dance, balancing on the edge of mutually beneficial economic partnership and deep, ingrained historical distrust. The border across the Tsugaru Strait remains one of the most militarized zones on the planet, bristling with radar stations and anti-ship complexes. Tokyo and Sapporo engage in a continuous spy game, sending hundreds of agents to each other disguised as businessmen and diplomats. However, pragmatism triumphs over past grievances. Southern corporations such as Mitsubishi and Sony are critically dependent on Northern patents in artificial intelligence and quantum cryptography, while Eizo needs uninterrupted supplies of food and raw materials from the South. This is a cold, calculated world where both states understand. A new war would be the end for both of them. From a political standpoint, the situation appears even more absurd and intriguing. Officially, the government in Tokyo still does not recognize the sovereignty of its northern neighbor. In Japanese schools on Honshu and Kyushu, children are taught history as if Hokkaido is a temporarily seceded northern province seized by rebels in 1869. On maps published in the Empire, the border across the Tsugaru Strait is marked only by a dotted line. But in practice, Japanese prime ministers have long reconciled themselves to the existence of a powerful, technologically superior state in the north. They regularly meet with the president of Azo in neutral territories, sign trade agreements, and exchange embassies, which they coyly call economic liaison offices. This diplomatic schizophrenia has lasted for decades, allowing Tokyo to save face before its conservative electorate, while de facto acknowledging geopolitical reality.
For ordinary residents of southern Japan, the Republic of Ezo remains a mysterious, cold, and frighteningly high-tech ghost country. It's a place from urban legends, where people speak a strange guttural language, eat strange food, and live under the rule of soulless algorithms. Southerners look at Northerners with a mixture of fear, admiration, and hidden envy. Ambitious young Tokyoites dream of obtaining a visa and enrolling in the Imperial, now Republican, University of Hokkaido, which consistently ranks among the top in the world for robotics. Wealthy Osaka businessmen secretly transfer their capital to Sapporo banks, knowing that it is more securely protected there than in Swiss Zug. Ezo for them is forbidden fruit, a cruel mirror of an alternative reality, showing what Japan could have become if it hadn't closed itself off in its traditions.
Today's Sapporo looks as if you've stepped straight into the set of a high-budget cyberpunk film, only without the grime and chaos inherent in the genre. Imagine perfect order, above snow-covered streets, framed by elegant 19th-century stone architecture, colossal holographic projections of blooming cherry blossoms float, impervious to the roaring blizzard. Autonomous security drones glide silently between the spires of French cathedrals and the facades of black glass corporate towers. The air is filled with the intertwining scents of freshly brewed espresso, roasted chestnuts, and ozone from high-voltage lines. At every intersection, intelligent terminals are installed, recognizing citizens' faces in a fraction of a second. This is a city of triumphant technological absolutism, where the ancient aesthetic of samurai clans has dissolved into neon light, creating a society living half a century ahead of the rest of humanity.
Bright neon signs, where strict Japanese characters and elegant French script intricately intertwine, reflect in the tinted windows of autonomous electric vehicles. These cars, more like armored capsules, are designed by engineers whose great-grandfathers once fought to the death with swords at the icy walls of Goryokaku Fort. Inside these capsules, top managers in sharp suits review stock market reports, protected by quantum encryption. It's amazing how the spirit of old Edo survived in these chrome jungles. On the rooftops of skyscrapers, minimalist rock gardens are laid out, where corporate bosses meditate before making multi-billion-dollar decisions. In this world, there is no contradiction between the katana and the microchip. They have become one, a tool for survival and dominance. The Republic of Ezo has transformed its past into fuel for an incredible, dazzling leap into the digital future.
The Republic of Ezo has become a living, pulsating embodiment of how a devastating historical defeat can turn into a nation's greatest triumph. Exiles who had lost everything, their castles, their lands, their shogun, found themselves trapped on a hostile, icy island. They had nothing but honor, old rifles, and a desperate will to live. But it was this existential crisis that forced them to abandon centuries of isolationism. By combining an unyielding will for freedom with an absolute openness to new Western ideas, they performed a miracle.
They proved that a nation's true strength lies not in blindly following traditions, but in the ability to adapt, to learn from yesterday's enemies, and to use cold calculation where only hot blood once ruled. This is a lesson in survival, written in golden letters in the alternative history of Asia.
This impregnable northern stronghold of armed democracy forever changed the very understanding of the Bushido code. In our reality, the way of the samurai degenerated into blind, fanatical loyalty to a suzerain or emperor, which ultimately led Japan to the catastrophe of World War II. But in Ezo, Bushido evolved into something far deeper and nobler. Here, being a warrior means being ready to defend one's home, one's rights, and the democratic ideals of the Republic at any cost. Honor is now measured not by the number of severed heads, but by one's contribution to the technological and economic power of the state. The citizens of Ezo serve not a man on a throne, but law and freedom. They proved to the whole world that ancient warrior valor can become the ideal foundation for building the most modern, free, and enlightened society on the planet.
The alternative history of snow-covered Hokkaido poses an incredibly important philosophical question about the nature of historical processes. How strongly can geography, accidents, and mundane climatic anomalies rewrite the destinies of entire peoples and continents? For consider the grand schism of a great empire, the emergence of a technological superpower, and the birth of a completely new culture, all hung by a thread. What if the wind had blown in a different direction? What if the storm hadn't sunk the vanguard of the imperial fleet? History does not move on predetermined rails. It is woven from millions of coincidences, where one severe blizzard, one timely order from Admiral Enomoto, or one French ironclad on the horizon can trigger a butterfly effect of colossal proportions, forever changing the geopolitical map of an entire hemisphere.
Imagine for a second that the winter of 1869 had been slightly warmer, as it was in our actual reality. The ice would not have gripped Hakodate Bay. The French fleet would have been delayed by bureaucratic red tape in Paris, and the weary samurai would not have been able to repel the general assault of superior imperial forces. Fort Goryokaku would have fallen in a few days. Jules Brunet would have been deported to France. Enomoto Takeaki would have surrendered to the mercy of the victor, and the independent Republic of Ezo would have remained just a tiny, forgotten footnote in history textbooks, a desperate rebellion of doomed conservatives that lasted less than 6 months. The world would never have seen this astonishing, neon-glowing high-tech utopia in the ice, and Hokkaido would have become an ordinary agricultural province of a unified Japan.
Yes, in that case, the Japanese Empire would have remained a unified, indivisible state from Okinawa to the Kuril Islands. But at what cost to the rest of the world? Humanity might have forever lost those crucial, revolutionary breakthroughs in robotics, cryptography, and artificial intelligence that the independent, cornered Ezo gave to the planet. Without fierce competition in the Japanese archipelago, without the unique blend of French engineering prowess and samurai discipline, global technological evolution could have taken a completely different, slower path. We would have lost an entire branch of civilization's development, where despair gave birth to genius, and a cold climate forced people to create machines that changed the face of global industry. Sometimes, the division of a country becomes the very catalyst that pushes all of humanity into the future. The history of the Republic of Ezo serves as a captivating, cinematic narrative of how a handful of exiles at the very edge of the world managed to build a state centuries ahead of its time.
It is a hymn to human will and the triumph of reason over circumstances. Looking at the shimmering neon lights of modern cyber Sapporo, at the autonomous vehicles and quantum data centers hidden deep within the mountains, it's hard to believe that the foundation of this unthinkable grandeur was laid by desperate, wounded samurai who fought to the death in the frozen trenches of Goryokaku Fort. This divided reality reminds us that in every historical crossroads, in every lost battle, lies infinite potential for the creation of entirely new, unimaginable worlds. The Republic of Ezo continues its journey into the future through snow and neon, remaining an eternal monument to samurai honor and French audacity.
Strolling today along Odori Avenue in the center of Cyber Sapporo, where holographic advertisements for the latest neuro implants from the Matsumai Brunei Corporation reflect in the gleaming helmets of patrol drones, it is indeed hard to believe the humble and bloody origins of this northern miracle. Imagine, directly beneath these perfectly clean boulevards, beneath the high-speed maglev trains rushing to Hakodate, lies earth soaked with the blood of desperate warriors. Those very frozen trenches of the winter of 1869, where the last defenders of the Tokugawa shogunate, huddled in tattered cloaks and clutching ice-covered katana hilts, awaited inevitable death from imperial cannons. They did not know they were building a superpower. They simply refused to surrender. And it was this stubbornness, multiplied by French artillery precision, that transformed a handful of doomed rebels into the architects of the most secure and technologically advanced state in modern Asia.
This paradoxical, bifurcated reality of the Japanese archipelago serves as our most vivid reminder of how fragile the fabric of history is. The border across the Tsugaru Strait is not just a demarcation line between Tokyo and Sapporo, it is the physical embodiment of a great point of bifurcation. On one side of the strait lies the traditional, corporate Japanese empire. On the other, the neutral Republic of Ezo, bristling with missiles and quantum encryptors, speaking a peculiar mixture of Kansai dialect and Marseille slang. In every such historical crossroads, in every accidental gust of icy wind or successfully signed diplomatic pact in the corridors of Versailles, lies infinite potential for the creation of entirely new, unimaginable worlds. Worlds where the ancient Bushido code can become the foundation for an advanced cybernetic democracy, and not just a beautiful myth from samurai novels.
And while diplomats in Tokyo continue to draft routine notes of protest, demanding the return of the northern territories, the Republic of Ezo inexorably continues its journey into the future through endless snow and pulsating neon. In secret laboratories beneath Mount Daisetsuzan, engineers in kimonos with embroidered French Republican emblems are perfecting a new generation of artificial intelligence. This independent state will forever remain a unique monument to human will, a monument to Admiral Enomoto's samurai honor, Captain Jules Brunet's audacity, and the absolute triumph of reason over geographical fatalism. The history of Ezo proves, even if the whole world considers you a relic of the past, you always have a chance to rewrite the rules of the game and become those who dictate the future. See you again at the crossroads of alternative history.